Hey everybody, it's the Trout, and welcome to another episode of the Trout Show. Thank you so much for stopping by. You know, I've been a guitarist for decades, and one of the things I dreamed about when I was performing is that I'd have a guitar tech working with me. Now, you're probably wondering what a guitar tech is. Well, if you've ever been to a major concert and saw anybody that's very well known playing guitar, you always see somebody run out, give them the guitar before they walk on stage. That guy is a guitar tech, and that is the person that makes sure that your strings are in tune, you have new strings on, your amps are working, everything is perfect. The only catch about having a guitar tech is that it costs money. And normally it's only really reserved for people that are famous. Not everybody can afford a guitar tech. But today I talked to one great guitar tech. That's the guitar tech for one of the most famous blues guys out there, and that's Buddy Guy. His name is Korte, and Connor was kind enough to sit down and talk to me about his career, how he got started in the music industry, got a degree in music, how he learned to be an expert in amplification, guitars, guitar strings, everything that it takes to be a fantastic guitar tech. He also talks about all the equipment that Buddy uses now on tour. Now, if you're a geek like me, you want to stay to the end and listen to all the details that Connor provides about all of Buddy's guitar strings, every one of his guitars, everything you want to know about Buddy Guy. So, if you're a geek and you like to know what a guitar tech does, and you want to know more about Buddy Guy, then you want to stick around and listen to this or watch this episode of the guitar tech for Buddy Guy, Connor. That's next on The Trout Show. For those people that don't know what a guitar tech is, that's what every guitarist dreams of having.
Yeah,
Right.
right. Exactly.
And my joke is I have three of them, me, myself, and I. So
Yeah.
that's what I have. So the truth of the matter is when you have a guitar tech, you're making enough money to afford a guitar tech, is
Of
really
course.
the truth of it is. But if you really become such a great guitarist and people are spending tons of money to see you, you need a guitar tech so you don't have to worry about it. And then the other thing is people have 50 guitars with them. They have ridiculous amounts of guitars they travel with. So you started out fairly young playing guitar.
Mhm.
What was when you started, what did you really want to do? Did you want to start a band? And I'm sure you was in a band and all that stuff. How did that all, we'll get to the other stuff and
Yeah.
stuff, but how
Yeah.
did you
Yeah. Yeah.
you got to get there, how you got there. But anyway, go ahead.
So, yeah, I mean, I played in bands when I was in middle school, and it was a cover band. It was a band called The Name Untold, where we played like Black Sabbath and the Police and a whole bunch of other things. And uh, I started playing guitar when I was about 4 years old,
That's It's the
and
youngest. I had a piano player that started playing, keyboard player that young. Most people are like me, 10, 12. I started at 12.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. So about 4 years old, I started playing, and my parents got me this little, toy acoustic guitar. So I started then. But yeah, the first band I really played in was in middle school. Um, at that point in my life, it was just a hobby, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and I was learning the ins and outs of, changing my own strings and finding different tones and how amps work and how really how a guitar works around that age.
So you
Yeah.
went from there, and then as you got older, you obviously kept playing the guitar.
Yeah, yeah, and it was still a hobby at the, getting into high school, but starting in the probably in my like freshman year, I started doing my own music. I started recording, I started writing songs,
Mm-hmm.
composing
Mm-hmm.
things. I never learned how to read music. It was all by ear most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
reading tablatry. But yeah, I mean, I started going in the studio and recording my own music, and I actually had a whole album I recorded.
Now,
And what
did you bring in players, or did you play most of the instruments? How did that work out?
Yeah, so it was mostly guitar and vocals that I did, and then the producer and engineer, he actually is a multi-instrumentalist, so he
Mm-hmm.
can he sat in and did all the guitar, all the bass, all the backup rhythm guitar, drums, keys. I mean, he knew how to play everything.
Yeah.
And it's funny that this is a recording studio that's still around that I now use, and we can get to that later. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it started turning out into, okay, this is something I really want to do as a profession now.
Right.
At getting into my high school career, and about to graduate high school, trying to figure out my path.
Yep.
Music was always something I wanted to do, but I guess I went down a different road, in the music industry. So, but it was definitely educational as a young musician, learning the ropes of recording your own music, writing songs, composing. Yeah, I mean, it really kind of stopped there as far as looking at it as a professional wise, playing music. But then I started going into a different route. But we'll go
So so
different.
you played and you thought, did you get a band together and start back, I mean, going out and playing your own music or anything? Did that happen?
No, no, no. I did talent shows. I did, you know, little coffee gigs, but
Hmm.
nothing. It was just myself. I did never put a band together around, my high school career or
Right.
anything.
Yeah.
It was mostly just a hobby and something I just loved. I had a passion for. So
You do something for a living that most of us don't like doing.
yeah, of
Changing strings.
course. Yeah. Yeah.
But the other thing is, it's interesting, is to me, you guys, and I say all the people that do what you do, are really the unsung heroes to a certain degree,
Absolutely.
of the people that stand out front.
Yeah.
You have the major players that have been around a long time that have the hired guns in the back, which
Mhm.
most people don't know who they are either. Um, but then you have the guys like you that really make it work.
Yeah.
And I've always admired that because people take, well, they don't know. The average fan has no idea.
Hmm.
You walk out on stage, a guy gives you a guitar, you're done, turn it
Yep.
on.
Yep.
And that's it. And if the string breaks, you run back out on stage and give him another
Other
guitar.
guitar. Yep. Yep. Exactly.
But it's really for you, and this is the thing I think would be hard for me, is you're around what you love, but you don't get to perform what you love.
Hmm.
You know, I'd be back there listening to them and I'd go, okay, give me a guitar. I'm just going to play along. Because it's like, so you're around the music industry, you're around, and you're obviously one of the greatest blues players that ever lived.
Yeah.
But that would be the part that bothered me. So you did that for a while, but where was the transition then, Connor, where you said, I want to go and actually, because I've always wondered, how do you get a gig like that? Because a lot of people know what you do.
Yeah.
No. But the other, what was the transition? You said, I'm thinking about maybe becoming a guitar tech, or was that just something you kind of fell into, or is it, I mean,
Yeah.
I really believe, and you probably know other guys that do what you do. You have to have a special personality, I think, to deal with
Absolutely.
that.
100%. So it started really, as far as guitar teching, um, after after college, really, um, or maybe even during college, I started working at a music store,
Mm,
and I was the guitar manager, where I learned, researched guitars and the different brands from Fender, Gibson, Martin, Taylor, Rickenbacker. I mean, you name it. I was studying them. I was told that I had to study them because in order to sell them, you need to know how the guitar works, what it's made
sure.
of,
Yeah.
what electronics are inside there, so that you can go to the customer and say, this is this guitar, or if they ask what's the difference between this and this, you got to be able to tell them. So I was studying them. I worked at this music store for, I think it was like 3 or 4 years.
Mm,
Um, and during that period of time, I went to meetings for Taylor, learned took online the Fender guitar. I think it's like a guitar tech master class or something like that.
Huh.
And I was constantly learning about these things and getting certified by Gibson, Martin, Taylor, all these big companies that are building guitars and amps. And there was also an in-house guitar tech. He was an older gentleman. His name's Chuck, and yeah, he really taught me the ropes about, changing pickups or putting a new nut on,
Mm.
or even just changing strings in general, and heights of strings and how to adjust it and intonation and all these things that just kind of grasp my attention. So he was an older gentleman, and it came to a point where I was starting to get quote unquote good at what I was doing. It was easy for me to set up guitars. If a customer came in, I didn't have to check it in and wait. They had to wait a week for it to get fixed. I could easily change the strings and get it to a point where customers were constantly making great reviews and saying, "Hey, these guitars sound great."
The
Uh,
thing about it though is this is interesting to me because most people, when they start out, and they still are, driven by whoever they see playing.
of course.
Oh, I wanted this, or I wanted that.
Mhm.
And they don't know anything about strings.
Mm,
They come in, and I'm sure a lot of them did.
yeah.
So, but then you get people like me that have been playing for decades. I already know what I want.
Mhm.
So it's just a matter, I want nines, I want
Sure.
D'Addario, this is what I use. I don't, now, but the other thing too is interesting what you just got through saying is, and I worked in sales and marketing for years.
Mhm.
Um, you actually understood the equipment
Of course.
instead
Yep.
of just going, oh, here, let's try a Rick.
Mhm.
Well, why would I want to try that? Well, because it's made out of this, it's got these kind of pickups on it, and it uses this, and it's got not doesn't have, and all that stuff. It's kind of like selling a car.
Absolutely. 100%.
I guess Stevie Ray was one of the people that kept changing his necks and changing this and changing like that, like that.
Of
So
course.
you had the opportunity because where you worked to be able to do that for people.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one of the main reasons why I really stuck around, because it was like people were chasing a certain tone or a certain feel or certain um thing that gravitated them towards the instrument that they love. And I was loving it. I mean, even as the in-house guitar tech, I mean, I was loving to see the smile on the face saying, "Hey,
Mm,
I have this guitar that's been sitting in my closet for 50 years or 15 years,
yeah,
and I haven't picked it up, and I would
yeah,
love to pick it up. Can you set this up for me and get it going?" I'm like, "Sure." Guitar is rusted strings, half the strings broken off, the frets are all worn and they need to be filed and edged, the sharp edges,
yeah,
or a broken nut on it, needs to put a new nut on. And
yeah.
when it came to like the wood is like splitting or anything
So
like that,
dry it out. Yeah, yeah,
you can go in there with a mirror and check and see how the guitar's looking from the inside out, and that's what really drove me to continue to do guitar teching outside of a store. And my profession wasn't going to be technically a professional guitar tech. That was not something I really wasn't wanting to do. What I really wanted to do was, be an audio engineer
mm,
and learn the insides and outs of recording music.
mm-hmm,
I mean, I went to Columbia College in Chicago. I
mm.
graduated with a bachelor's degree in audio engineering.
Wow.
So I studied that, and but the main thing I wanted to do in my life was go on the road. That was something I've always wanted to do since I was probably 7 years old. I mean, my dad would take me to concerts, whether it's AC/DC or Peter Frampton or Styx or REO or
Yeah.
any of these guys, and see the road crew, everything set up. This I'm hearing the sound. I'm seeing a guy behind a board. I'm seeing guitar techs. I'm seeing giant buses. I'm seeing production
Yeah.
trailers. That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
That was the drive for me. So I went into audio engineering because I
Yeah.
wanted to be an audio engineer. I loved making music. I loved going to the studio and doing things like that. So the profession, when I got into the touring world, it started changing because I started doing more jobs and I was capable of doing different things. I wasn't just strictly a monitor engineer, just strictly a front of house engineer.
Yeah.
I had the diversity of doing multiple jobs. So that's kind of where it led off was, after college, getting in my first tour.
And what was your first break to work from being a roadie to moving more into maybe the front of the house?
Mhm.
What
Yeah.
happened about that?
So, when I was the stagehands the guy who loads in the gear, I was actually I was running sound at some little dive bar, and I was mixing sound at some. I mean, I was getting paid probably $100 a night,
Yeah.
be a little bit more, but I was there for uh band went on at 9, didn't get home till like 3 o'clock in the morning,
Yep.
and this was right after my work shift at the music store. So
Oh, so you're doing both. Oh,
I
wow.
was going straight there and it was right
Yeah.
across the street. So I started running sound there and it was a little, analog board. It was nothing crazy. It was probably like a Mackie or any,
Yeah,
something
yeah, yeah.
analog. So I learned how to set up PA and do that with the stagehands. I took that and I started setting up the PA and running cable and ringing out monitors and ringing out the front of house at this tiny little dive bar. But I wanted to get my hands dirty, so it was a learning experience, and it helped that I was in college learning how to run sound too. Being even though I was more so in the studio production, in the studio audio engineer rather than a live audio engineer, which there are differences, but
Oh, yeah.
you can also take what you learned in the recording realm in a studio and apply that into the live sound.
Sure. Yeah.
Was learning at college and I was working at the music store and I was running sound at this club or this little dive bar, and it was when I met a band that came into the music store, and they they were just touring. I mean, these guys were just some guys from Detroit, three brothers and a drummer, and they were like, "Hey, we're playing in Chicago. Come out to the Elbow Room. We're playing down there." I was like, "Sure, why not?" You
Yeah.
know. So they were playing at the Elbow Room. I went down there. I said, "Hey, I run sound. Is there any way that I can run sound for you guys or even book you at this club?" They're like, "Well, tonight, they have the sound figured out.
Mhm.
Like, it's cool. But yeah, I mean, we would love to play a show, come back to Chicago and play a show." So I got them to play at that dive bar that I was running
Run
sound
the
at
sound at. Yeah.
because I wanted to run sound for them.
Sure.
So, so that relationship changed when they came and they, played at this place. And after that, they're like, "Hey, you want to come on the road with us?" Mind you, these are kids my age
Yeah.
time traveling in a van
Yeah. I
around
was
the
gonna
country.
say. Yeah.
And it wasn't it weren't like they were professionals,
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
time. It was just like, let's just get on the road and make music and play
Yeah.
music. So I was like, sure, I'll do it. I'll come out with you guys. And we went on the road. I took some time off of work, jumped in the van with four or five other dudes, gear in the back, Even before that, I drove all the way to Detroit, where they were based out of, and they were playing a show at, I forgot what the place was called, Pyramid Scheme maybe or something like that. And yeah, I mean they were playing it a headliner show, and I was decided to be their guitar tech because they came in the music store and I
Yeah.
was doing
Did it.
guitar.
Yep.
So I was like, oh, well, they have an audio engineer at the club. I'll just be your guitar tech. I'll set up your guitars, I'll hand you guitars, I'll make sure they're in tune, and that's it.
Yep.
Oh, went on the road with these guys, and we traveled all over the Midwest and went all the way down to Texas, and it was a great time in my life. And these guys weren't on a major record label. Like I said, they were just kids that wanted to do something that they loved, and they're
Yeah.
still doing it, and they're still traveling, and they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. um but I was on the road with them, and I had a friend who was like, hey man, we're looking for a monitor engineer for this is a major tour. A guy who I went to college with, who was in the same classes as me, got in the touring industry, and he reached out. So I got on the road professionally after that.
Who was the band?
So the band that I was originally touring with, the kids, they're still
Well, both of
around.
them, the ones that they're
Yeah,
still around, and then the
yeah,
one that elevated you to the next level.
yeah. So the band that I was playing, that I was traveling with, they're called Brother Elsie. ELESY is the Brother Elsie, and three brothers and a drummer. Great harmonies. I mean, the harmonies are incredible. And yeah, I mean, I was traveling with them, and did stuff for them for a while, and you know mind you, I was still doing little gigs at bars and doing other things, and
Mhm.
getting in the blues realm around that time. It's the story kind of jumps in different places because I was
Well,
doing
yeah, because yeah, I understand that.
singing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like I was getting into the blues realm around that time, and helping a guy set up a venue in Westmont where unfortunately where Muddy Waters passed away. That was his resting place. And building the PA in this venue that's still open, still running, having blues bands, and you know booking blues bands around that time, and running sound at this club, and making this club a huge blues scene, which we can get back to if you want to.
Yeah.
It's a place called Johnny's Blitz, out in Westmont. Um, but yeah, so I was with Brother Elsie, and then I jumped into a guy named Masego.
Hmm.
This is a professional. I mean, this was bus, trailer,
Yeah, the real
uh,
thing.
12 bunks,
Oh
coffin
yeah.
bunk, tiny little
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Coffin
and I
bucks.
was the monitor engineer. My first major tour. Like just really diving head first into something that I definitely didn't know what I was getting myself into. Uh, for sure,
Yeah.
because it's definitely different than running sound at a dive bar
Oh,
or
sure.
sound in the
Yeah.
studio. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I went with a guy named Masego. He's more R&B, rap. I wouldn't say rap, more R&B. He has his own thing. It's called trap house jazz music or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it was
Yes.
an eight-piece band.
Yeah.
All in-ears, all monitors. Learning the ins and outs of that, and being on a digital console, and having my own rig, and power amps and stage boxes, and learning how to scan for RF, and doing all of
Oh,
those.
wow. Yeah. The stuff that people don't know anything about. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Because
started
everything's so much, well, a lot of people still plug in, but a lot of it's so much wireless stuff
Oh yeah.
that
I mean, it
back.
was band drums, bass, keys, guitar, saxophone, two background singers. I mean,
That's a lot of equipment.
yeah, it's a lot.
Did you keep getting
more acts that wanted you, or how did you keep going up? You had to keep going up with your experience too.
Yeah. So, after running monitors for him, they really got my foot in the door. And there was a company called Bobnet that's actually like kind of like it's not really hidden to the world, but
Yeah,
it's you have to have a membership, you have to submit a resume, you have to be
yeah,
accepted into this group.
right.
And once you're accepted in the group, it's really like an Indeed for touring. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a place where they send out job posts of different companies that or bands or management that are looking for guys like myself to come out and be on the road. So, um, after that tour, I learned about that company, and I signed up and I submitted my resume. I got accepted into this world. Um, Mind you, there's thousands of other people in this company's database,
sure.
so
Yeah,
they're getting the same emails as I am.
yeah,
Um, with my experience of college degree, my experience of running sound, at these clubs, being being a stagehand for these major people. I mean, regardless, it shows that I have stage experience.
sure.
Then having this major tour, there were job posts that I was like, okay, I got a taste of this touring world. This is something that I really, really still want to do, you know, especially having the one thing that gets every person in this industry, the thing that drives and is like a drug for all of us is right before a band is about to go on
Mm.
stage, that adrenaline rush. Regardless if you're a tech, if you're an audio engineer, if you're a monitor engineer, production manager, lighting guy, drum tech, bass tech, key tech, whatever you are.
Doesn't matter.
Right before those lights are about to hit or the band's about to go on, that's the drive that it's like a drug. It's
Yeah,
something that drove me into applying for more jobs for this touring. I'm like, I got my first gig. This looks great on my resume. Uh, you know, I still friends with the guy who was on tour with, still friends with all the band and the crew. They're just going up. They needed somebody more experienced, and I'm fine with that. I took no hard feelings, not at all. It was great, great learning experience. But I had a reference now. I had a guy who's in the professional touring industry, who's been touring longer, who can vouch for me, saying,
oh yeah.
"Hey, he was
So
on
it's
tour."
all about reputation now. At
Exactly.
that point, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I applied for a job uh, as another monitor engineer. I already have that monitor engineer on the website or on my resume, sorry. And I applied for another touring gig. Mind you, I was still now running sound at a blues club, hiring blues musicians as a booking agent there.
That's fine.
Still keeping my profession of running sound for the brothers that the Brother Elsie band, that they were still having gigs. I was still doing stuff with them,
Well,
setting up a PA at some random place and running cable and running sound for these guys, and even going down to South by Southwest with them to run sound and really be their like tour manager and the guitar tech and front of house engineer, and having all these, using my skills and honing in on them and using them for really a career. Like it's
sure. Yeah.
building a career for myself. And I applied for this job with a band called Super Organism. It was like another like 8-piece band,
Well,
and they were running tracks, and we were on a bus and a trailer and 12 bunks, coffin bunks, and you know you had a day room and you were showering at the venue, and
mm,
that's sleeping on the bus, eating on the
mhm.
bus. everything. I mean, you started becoming, it's like a family on the road.
Oh,
So
sure it is. Yeah.
I was their monitor engineer, and we were doing festival gigs, and I was out for 3, 4 months with these
Mm.
guys, and traveling, or setting up all their equipment and traveling from state to state in a bus and eating terrible food and being on a different console every night, not having my own console that I
Oh,
wrote
wow.
the previous
Oh,
tour. So I
oh,
was
yeah.
really learning how to run these consoles and going on offline editor and building scenes and you know different rooms. Thankfully they were all on in-ears, which helped, which was a whole different thing,
Yeah, it's a lot easier. Yeah.
learning how to mix on in-ears, though, because
Yeah.
everyone had, unfortunately, different in-ears.
Oh, sure.
So
Oh,
it's like
they had different brands.
all different brands.
Oh, wow. And of course, I know everybody wants something different, obviously,
Yeah, of
in their
course.
ear. Yeah, sure.
So I went on the road with them and learned the festival rig and learning how to deal with
Because
festivals.
you're playing outside a lot, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's just a whole different ball game there.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So they were doing big festivals. I mean, I did Coachella was the first gig
Oh, that's a big deal. Yeah.
that was the first show I ever did with them, was Coachella. And I was like, great, this is going to be fantastic. And we had one day of rehearsal, really. Flew to LA and we did one day of rehearsal. But yeah, Coachella, a festival. First festival, mind you, touring professionally. The previous tour was all clubs and theaters.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really, really started to learn the ropes of being on tour
Yeah.
and just and because I had the previous tour I applied those skills to this one, which the tour lasted a little bit longer. So I started going out with this band called Superorganism, and then I started getting on some other gigs.
When did you get the Buddy Guy gig? Or I should say, how did you get the Buddy Guy gig?
So I did about 3 or 4 other tours after that
So
Superorganism gig.
you're getting more and more experience, obviously.
Yeah, I
And
mean
it's funny too, because you were doing the blues club, which is, were you into blues at all that much before that?
Yeah, I grew up listening to it. My father introduced me to Buddy Guy, and and Muddy Waters, and
Oh, the greats. Yeah.
AC/DC. He's like, you listen to AC/DC, right? I said, yeah. He's like, well, you should be looking at who Angus had learned from or who he was listening to, and it kind of led down a rabbit hole.
So how long have you been doing the deal with Buddy?
As of right now, it's coming on close to 2.5, 3 years. It might be 2 years. I've lost track, to be
See,
honest
and the
with you.
funny thing about it, I thought he was going to quit like 2 years ago.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah.
it's so funny because I know he has the place is in Chicago that his place
Yeah,
is. Yeah,
yep,
the
yep,
Legends. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I got
yeah,
to tell you, just a quick side note. So I interviewed a young guitar player out of Nashville. His name's Danny Garwood.
yep,
Danny's a great player. And I've been fortunate to find four of these people that are all, most of them are, well, one of them's not. Two of them are harp players that are blues players. One of them's 15. They're all good players. So Danny went to one of Buddy's shows last year.
yep. I was there. I
You
helped him
remember
get on
that?
stage. Yep, helped him get on stage.
And he just put up the other day, it was actually on Buddy's birthday, the moment when Buddy gave him his guitar pick.
Hmm.
And somebody in the crowd caught the picture. And it was just an amazing, I'll send it to you. It is a really cool picture because here's this kid that, of course, and Danny's small for his age. He's
Yeah,
16 now, I think. I just saw him in April, but the look on his face, one of these, and the look was so classic. And I think the thing about it is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you work for a guy that seems to want to he's always been able to find or looks for younger players that he
yep,
helps promote.
yep.
And do you think he does, well, you might not think, you probably know. Do you think he does that really to keep the blues alive, as Joe Bonamassa would say? Do you think that's part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Being the last of the living legends,
Yeah.
he wants to the genre going. He promised Muddy, Muddy told him, you got to keep the blues alive,
Yeah,
and something that in order for him to do, he's got to like pass the torch, keep this music going, whether you're white, whether you're black, whether
yeah, it
you're
doesn't matter.
Hispanic, whatever, just keep the music going. And he loves having young musicians on stage because it's kind of fuel to his fire, you know,
Sure.
kind of kind of like, okay, I'm doing something right, or these guys are really, really doing it. And there you have a drive that I see. So he loves having young musicians on stage, that's for sure. Absolutely.
I think too, for me, it's the excitement you see when they're on their way up.
Oh yeah.
And I've told them, I've interviewed dozens of people, and I'll tell them, I say, and there's a lot of people I interview. I do a lot of indie artists that I know are okay.
Hmm.
They're going to make it, but they're not going to be big, which some of them
Yeah.
don't care. But then you have the one percenters
Yep.
like Danny, and you're like, okay. And then you see the excitement, the stuff that we all had when we were 12,
Yep.
you know, and we're, we've been involved now, and we know what it's really like,
Yeah,
it's all
right.
that. So tell me about his rig. What does he use when he plays?
Buddy,
Yeah.
um first off, let me get back to how I
Oh,
got
yeah,
with
yeah, yeah, yeah. Finish that story. Yeah, I'm
let
sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
me
Okay.
go back how I
Yeah,
got.
I forgot to. Yeah, finish it. Go ahead.
So at the time that I was joining Buddy as his guitar tech, um I was actually I'm really heavily in the blues community. I mean, I love the blues.
Up in Chicago where you live. Yeah.
Yep. Love the blues. I mean, going to different clubs, meeting different people, just having a great connection with these artists. Um, and especially after running sound at that blues club out in Westmont and booking bands there, blues bands. I wanted it to be a blues bar. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love blues. I wanted it to be a blues bar, so I made it. The owner was gracious enough to let me book blues bands. And I was meeting all these blues musicians and learning the insides and outs of their music and learning stories from them, but not a whole lot of stories because there's not a lot that you could find online from these guys who are just playing in Chicago or been around for,
Yeah.
fortunately, a long time, that haven't,
Sure.
have their history documented, which I did later down the line for about 122 musicians, but that's another story. So I got really heavily into the blues realm and running sound at Johnny's Blitz, and I met a lot of these great guys, and I did that for about 2, 3, maybe 4 years, 2 years, 3 years, something like, I don't know the timeline. And I met Buddy's son, Greg. Um, and this was pre-pandemic. This was way before that.
Hmm.
And he became a really good friend of mine. He came in.
Does he play in his band? Does he play? He does
he
play, doesn't
comes
he?
he comes out. He comes out and plays, sits in at the last song.
But he's the guy that usually plays with him has been with him for a long time. I've seen him. I just can't remember his name. One
Yeah,
of the
so that's
guitar.
Rick. Rick's the rhythm, Rick
Yeah.
Jazz.
He's been around with him a long time.
Yeah, he's been around with him for a
So
while.
okay, go back. I'm sorry. Just go ahead.
So I met Greg. Greg came in and started playing with a guy who I consider like my blues father, Lindsay Alexander. He came in, and Lindsay was actually the first musician that I booked blues wise, besides Lori Bell
That's
and
why
all.
he's on your website.
Yeah. So I met Greg through Lindsay. He came in and sat in at the club that I was running sound at, and me and Greg just connected. Um, you know, he's an incredible human being. He's like my brother.
Mhm.
We just gelled, him and his wife Vicky, we all became friends. I mean, we exchanged numbers, exchanged information, exchanged social medias, and we just stuck around. And um, I just because he was buddy's son, it kind of just went, I didn't, I'm not just going to be friends with somebody because your father,
I understand
whatever.
completely. Yeah, I
You know
got
what I
you.
mean?
Yeah.
I really hone in on somebody and learn them from their personality and really became friends and really hung out with each other. And prior to that, of course I'd go down to Legends. Of course I'd go to Kingston Mines. Even when I was in college, I'd go to Legends. It was right down the street. So me and Greg hung out a lot. I'd go down to the club, hang out with him, have a beer, and he was running sound at the club and at Legends.
Yeah.
And he's been doing that for a very long time. So pandemic hit,
Yeah.
and of course touring world was done,
Yep.
and that shut down completely. I was in Canada. I was doing arenas with a band as their guitar tech and stage manager. And I was actually in the middle of setting up a drum set when the promoter came out and said, "You might want to slow down on that." Right?
Yeah.
So
And that Canada was weird too. They were
yeah.
like, oh, yeah. Still is a little
So,
strange up there, but anyway.
so I was I had no job really, living off of what everyone else was getting,
Yeah.
with the whatever, I forgot what it was called.
Oh yeah,
Uh
the money. Yeah, the government. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah.
government money.
Yeah.
Unemployment or whatever it was.
Yeah, they gave money for your business. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So um we were still meeting each other, at that time when the pandemic hit, we were really good friends. um I created a documentary because I love the blues. It's a documentary series where I interviewed 125 musicians,
Mm,
from all blues musicians. um Unfortunately, most of them, not most of them, but a lot of them have passed away,
sure. Yeah.
starting from the beginning of their life, working all the way to the end of their life, or not end of their life, their current days. Sorry. So beginning of their life to current days, which was the pandemic.
Right.
The
Because they weren't
club,
doing anything either.
the club was closed down.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, so nobody was going in there. Blues on Halstead was closed down, obviously, and unfortunately, they just wouldn't. They're not going to reopen. So I had opportunities, and I brought up the idea with Vicky, who is Greg's wife, and she also is heavily in the blues industry, in the blues realm. And we knew a lot of people, and I was like, "This needs to get done." I'm seeing a lot of musicians pass away with the COVID.
Yeah.
A lot of musicians,
And they're just getting old.
and they're getting old.
Yeah.
And going back to Johnny's Blitz, at that time I was researching these musicians, and there wasn't really anything online. My age in my era, we like to watch videos and YouTube and all these things. And I
Yeah.
was searching YouTube, and there was just nothing beside, like, interview wise. Of course, there's
Yeah.
performances, but
Sure. Yeah.
so, and I was interviewing these musicians, and Vicky helped me out, and she was great getting musicians in and doing everything, as far as communication and organization and organizing time slots. And Greg and Vicky allowing me to use the club as a filming shoot,
Oh wow.
basically.
So that's cool. Yeah.
Um, so 125 or 22 musicians, all blues musicians. They were part of the project, and the project is still, I'm still in the editing process. I mean, the 122 musicians is crazy. So, um, like I said, these stories are just so deep rooted, and there's so many different, pathways that it just leads me into, like getting in my own booking age, making my own booking agency for blues musicians, and doing all these different things, really honing in on the blues world, the blues industry, the history of it, learning all these musicians' stories, interviewing them for 4 hours, even, filming B-roll and filming.
Oh yeah. That's a lot of work.
I never picked up a camera before, and like this was my first film It's called 594 miles from Chicago, which takes you to Clarksdale, Mississippi.
Yeah, I know where that is.
So interviewing all these musicians, learning their stories, alongside having Greg, being a great friend, Vicky being an incredible friend. When the pandemic started to slow down, the club was about to open back up.
Right.
So they needed a sound guy. Of course, I'm an audio engineer.
Yeah.
I was like, Greg, like, do you need help, man? Like, they were changing the PA. They were about to do that. I was helping them set up everything. He's like, yeah, I mean, great. You want to come in? Come help me out. I don't have another sound guy right now because the previous guy went to go work at a casino.
Yeah. People were kind of finding work where they could. Yeah.
Exactly. So I started, working at the club. Club started opening back up, running sound at the club, and being there a lot. Really running sound professionally, with musicians from 6 o'clock, or when they open up, to 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And meeting other blues musicians, and
Oh,
just,
sure.
I mean, I'm immersed in blues.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it's my life, learning these people. So me and Greg, incredible friends, like a brotherhood. I owe a lot to him for having, not allowing me, but giving me a pathway to walk on to be with Buddy. So January's, of course, Buddy plays at his club. And running sound for the opening acts, and having Buddy's front of house engineer and his monitor engineer, Max and Sage. Max is Buddy's tour manager in front of house, and Sage is the production manager and the monitor engineer. So I met the guys. We had an incredible relationship. We built a relationship, helped them load in gear, right? Going back to what I was talking earlier.
Yeah.
Help load in gear.
You kind of knew how to do that too, didn't you?
Help set up. And like, they were like, wow, like this guy's great. Every time we're here, like, we don't really have help. Like, usually they just,
nobody likes doing that. Nobody likes doing
right?
it. Yeah.
So I was really hands-on with them, and I built a relationship with them. And, unfortunately and fortunately, the previous guitar tech stepped down from his position. And in January, it was like, I think it was like 2021?
Had to be 21 or 22.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or 22, one of the
Probably
two.
22. Yeah.
Buddy, when he was doing the January residency, right back into the swing of things, of course, social distancing, but the guitar tech previously, Chris Bynum, he said, hey, if I get sick, I need somebody to cover me, and I know that you're capable of doing it. So he showed me the rig. He showed me how everything's set up, and I was like, okay, well, he never got sick, but I still learned how to do it. You know what I mean?
How are you feeling today? You still not feeling
Yeah,
good? You don't look
exactly.
very good today.
Exactly. So getting back to Chris Bynum, unfortunately, stepping down from his position. Fortunately and unfortunately.
Yeah.
Sage, Playkosh, actually put out a post on Facebook, and Chris also put out a posting, A-list artists, and I knew who they were talking about.
Sure
I knew,
you did, yeah.
I knew Buddy.
Yeah.
A-list artists needing a professional guitar tech, and all these things that you'd have to do as his guitar tech, and I was like, why not? I can eat. I mean, this is my life. Guitars are, of course, being guitar tech on previous tours before this.
Yeah.
I have the resume. Like,
Yeah.
this is, and I'm with the family. I mean, family knows me. Buddy has lots of kids, and they all work at the club. They know who I am. I've been working there for almost 2-3 years.
Yeah.
And prior to that, just going to the club and being friends with Greg and immersed in the family relationships, I applied. And it's a weird thing. There was a guy, it was up against me and another guy. Mind you, this guy I was technically up against, right? Was Prince's guitar tech. He was guitar tech for the Rolling Stones at some point. He was guitar tech for all these musicians, right?
You're
All
like,
these huge
okay, I
musicians,
know you guys, but hey, come on.
right?
Yeah.
I got the call saying, "Hey, man, from Sage, we appreciate you putting in your resume, and we're gonna give this other guy a try, and we'll see how it goes. For a week. I just want to see how it goes."
Right.
I was like, "No worries.
Yeah.
I will run. I'll still. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I'll still run sound at the club. I'll still be around Buddy. But I still wanted to get on the road. Like I was just itching to get back on the road because
Wow.
pandemic.
Yeah.
So the guy stepped down. He said, "I can't do this." And
Why do you think he stepped down?
I
You
don't
don't
know.
know.
I think, he was an older gentleman and he just, didn't realize that he got to unload a trailer.
Oh, he was doing the grunt work too. Okay.
He's used
He's not
to,
just doing guitar tech. He's doing
yeah.
other stuff to go along
So
with it. Yeah.
he's used to white gloves. Put on the white gloves, like walk into the venue. I don't have to touch a case, all my stuff set up.
Yeah.
So be it. So Sage called me. He's like, "Hey, you still want that gig?" Like he was stuck. It was in the middle of a tour. The guy quit.
Oh,
Chris
wow.
Chris stepped down. Now this guy stepped down
Oh,
and
wow.
said, "Can we to Max? Can we bring please? Can we bring Connor in?" Like everyone was rooting for me.
That's
The
cool.
family was pushing for me.
Yeah.
Everybody was pushing for me, and they brought me in, and I became Buddy Guy's guitar tech and stage manager, of course. But
Yeah.
and in this job title, it's not just guitar tech. There's so many other things that I have to do with Buddy, and it's and building a relationship with him, having him trust me. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
trust is like with
Oh,
him, the number one thing is having trust in
yeah.
relying on me to get it right every single night. And of course, in the beginning, there were struggles. There were things that I had to learn that I've had talks with Buddy,
Yeah.
conversations with how he wants things. And I don't know how the other guitar techs were. Of course, there's, probably 4 or 5 other ones, and I know their names, Gilbert and Mark and Chris, and God only knows who else. I don't know how their relationships were with Buddy. I wasn't
Doesn't
around.
matter.
Wasn't
Doesn't
around,
matter. Doesn't matter. Mm-mm.
So, but I know personally, being at the club working, I look at Buddy and I, like any other musician, I don't look at their status. Look at them as a human being, who they are, how they are as a person, how do they treat other people, and having conversations with them. I'm not scared to go up to Buddy and, just talk.
What's his rig?
So he runs 2 Fender Basements. Both
Interesting.
of them are hand wired from Fender. These amps were in storage for a while because the previous tech was kind of getting tired of them breaking down on him all the time.
Because they're old.
But no, they're actually really new.
Oh, they're new?
Yeah, they're from 2015 or.
Oh, yeah, they're not that old. Yeah. And
So
what do they have in them? 212s or what is it? They're 410s?
it's
I
410s.
410s.
410s. He uses Alessandro Eminent speakers that I recently put in there. They sound amazing. Yeah, so they're hand wired. The wood on one of them, the main one that is incredible. It's not even comparable to the other one. The wood is actually from the corner store his mother used to go to when he lived in Louisiana. So they took the pine from the countertops there and they made it all hand wired. They tried to get it as close to his original 59 basement as they could. Of course, you can't really do that because the capacitors and the resistors and
they don't make
all those things, even the wiring harness inside of there, it's just not the same.
Yeah.
So they got it as close as they could. And they sat in storage because they kept breaking or, you know, busting, and they're hand wired. I mean, usually all the other 59 Bassman LTDs are just circuit boards, you know, they put them in there, and or
Yeah.
circuit
They're
boards.
mass produced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got them out of storage. You know, and I was like, I got to get these set up. I know that these sound good.
Mhm.
You know, I heard them in January. I heard one of them, really, the main one, the real one, the real pine one. And yeah, I was like, what's going on with these things? You know, I really dove into amps, like really learned, you know, started bringing back my old,
Yeah.
trying to open up the old textbooks of my past days of being
Sure.
a guitar, you know, guitar tech and all
Yeah.
that stuff at the music
Yeah.
store. You know, I took that amp apart. Me and Sage took that amp apart, changed the bias capacitor in it. You know, you have to bias amps. You got to make sure that they're biased
Yep.
correctly.
Yep.
'Cause
Yep.
otherwise it's die out. Of course, they were biased way too hot. So I'm not saying Chris didn't know what he was doing, but from what I've heard, you know, amps weren't his specifics. So you know, he just got tired of fixing them. So I got the amp all fixed up. Amp's great. I got the other one out. Had to fix same issue, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Got him up and running. Buddy was, you know, looking back, and he was like, and looked at me, and he was like, right then and there, you know, I knew, like, that's what he's been looking for. And you know, being his tech, I was chasing a tone for a while, and getting back to, and I'll get back to his rig in just a second, but
Yeah, that's all right. Go ahead.
chasing his tone. For me, it felt like decades, but you know, he wanted a specific tone, and I'm the kind of guy with Buddy. I'm not afraid. I'll put a pedal out, you know, on
Oh
there,
yeah,
or,
yeah, yeah.
you know, give him a different guitar, or you know, change the tubes, you know, put a different tube in there, or you know, just experimenting. So I really had to fix the rig. Like the rig, it was simple, but there's a lot of different things that I needed to do in order to make it better. And um and a lot of that had to just be trial and error with Buddy. And I built his trust. And of course, you know, him being 87, now 88, or he was 86 at the time, or 85. You know, he's been around a while, and he's had techs who were
Oh
great,
yeah.
and some that weren't, and some that had experience, and some that didn't. And
He's been
you
through a
know,
lot. Yeah.
been through a lot, so he knows what he wants. And people might not know this, but he's picky. You know,
Oh, I would think so. After
he's very
playing
picky about his tone.
60 some years
Yeah,
playing, of course he's
yeah.
picky.
So getting back to his rig, what he plays. He plays two Fender Bassmans, all both hand wired pine cabinets. Alessandro, the 10-inch speakers. I forgot the GC or GS 59s. So speakers. So Buddy uses Eminence GA10 SC 59s. So they're the 10-inch speakers. Alessandro's, they sound great. He had the original P10Rs from Jensen, but I didn't like the tone of them. The Eminence sound so natural, so close to his original 59, which he still has, which is covered in you know, wallpaper and he's carried around that amp in Africa, and you
Oh
know, all
man.
other things. Um So he uses that. He uses getting. I mean, I get even really specific. His tubes are tungstels, 6L6s. He's using a Softtech 5AR4 for his pop, you know, his rectifier tube. He doesn't use solid state rectifiers because they just don't sound good. And then I use Electro Harmonics For I use 12AX7, 12AX7, and a 12AY7, so that cuts the gain down, and it doesn't give it so much drive, so to say, not a lot of gain, because if you use 12AX7, it's 100% gain. So there's differences in the gain with that tube. So I I experimented with that, trying to find the right V1 tube, and I found the right one. And he uses those 2 amps. He's got on the road. I have my guitar world, so to say. It's a big vault that I bought locally here, that was used, and I was like, well, I'm getting tired of getting the guitar boat out, and getting the guitars out of their cases, and getting, it's just a pain in the butt. I just want them all to live in one place. So
Sure. Yeah.
I brought, he on the road, he has his 1988 Fender Strat, the cream color one that he loves. I mean, he adores. That's his baby. I mean, that he doesn't want any. That says Lucille, like BB's.
Yeah.
His Lucille. That's his Lucille.
Jimmy had the white one.
The
That's what he
white.
played. The white one he played. When I saw him
Yep.
play, he played it for 2 songs, and then the tech came out and grabbed it and
Yeah.
gave him like a sunburst. That was the
Yeah.
one that they loved. Yeah.
Of course. So he plays. So that's the main one he plays. On the road, I have his original polka dot, from 91, I believe. It was made in 91.
But that was made for him, wasn't it?
That was made for him. Yeah. So the
He was the
story.
one that came up with the polka dot deal, wasn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
So
That's what I thought.
his mother, he promised his mother that he'd get a polka dot Cadillac, and she was very sick.
I'm not
she
laughing at that. I just think it's funny what people end up doing.
yeah. So he promised his mother a polka dot Cadillac when he was going to go up to Chicago, but he unfortunately never did that, and she passed away.
So
So
he
he
honors her by playing the polka
honors
dot
her by
guitar.
having polka dots.
That's a
So
cool story, my friend. That's really
yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So I have his original black and white on the road with me. And I found his white and black polka dot that you probably saw with him playing with the Rolling Stones.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that video.
Black
Yeah,
one. He also
yeah.
played it at I think it was the Kennedy Center Honors, or all those major events. He was playing that.
Because they played Crossroads here when they were here the last time, and I can't
Yeah.
remember. That was had to be pre-pandemic, I think.
Yeah. So that was
'Cause
2000. That guitar is 2006. The white and black polka dot. All these are master builds. So the
yeah,
black
I'm
and
sure.
white, the black and white is Larry Brooks, made by Larry Brooks. His cream one is Michael Stevens, and the white one is, I forgot what the guy's name is. I'm not sure. I totally blanked out. He's got a blue and white polka dot Strat. I got on the road the yellow and purple polka dot that's from LSU. The LSU gave him. And then I got the blue and white, the yellow and purple, and then I just got him made a relic polka dot, black and white, over top of a 58 colored Strat. So his original 58 got stolen from him.
Oh, wow.
The one that you see him used to play all the time when he was younger, got stolen. And I decided, what better way than put both worlds together, and I made
That's cool.
a relic.
Yeah.
It looks all reliced up, black and white over the 3-tone sunburst. So we have that. So black and white, white and black, the relic, the blue and white, the yellow and purple, and then his cream one. So I have a lot of guitars.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you do. But here,
Yeah.
so whose brand what's his guitar strings?
So well, of course he uses Fender guitars, all master built. I want to also say this: Paul Waller made the blue and white, the purple and or yellow and purple, and the relic strings. He uses 10 through 46 Ernie balls.
Okay.
I've been getting into the Paradigm series of Ernie ball. Yeah, so I use those, and I learned from, I don't know if you've heard of Rene Martinez.
Sounds familiar to me, yeah.
Rene Martinez was Stevie Ray Vaughan's guitar tech.
Ah, okay.
He was also John Mayer's guitar tech and
Yeah.
a whole bunch of other musicians. You know, as when I started the gig with Buddy, I was having trouble, you know, either tuning because Buddy bends the string so hard,
Yes, he does.
or breaking a string. And you know, he taught me the wire insulation trick of putting wire insulation at the bottom where the string meets the bridge in the saddle, so that the friction of the string doesn't rub up against
The bridge.
the bridge, so that it doesn't snap or break. And of course, making sure you have your burr free on the saddles
Oh,
and make sure
yeah.
they're clean, and lubricating all the nut slot and the saddles and even the string tree. And then he's got open slot tuners on his guitars. So the vintage open slot tuners, a lot of people put the string in the hole. I don't put the string in the hole. I wrap it around and lock it in there. And what that does is that creates a tighter grip against the string,
Yeah.
and the guitar pretty much stays in tune unless Buddy touches it. You know,
Yeah,
tunes it to the
yeah,
way
yeah,
that
yeah.
not some most of the time he hears something on the D string and it's tuning it, but it's the guitar's in tune when he gives it back to me. Like maybe the high E will go a little out of tune, but most of the entire show is pretty much in tune. Even when he beats it with the drumstick, I mean that guitar stays in tune. So Ernie balls, and I gotta stretch the crap out of those strings. I mean,
Oh, I was going to ask you, what do you have to do to
I
it
have
before you?
calluses all on my fingers from stretching strings, because I will sit there and I will make sure I stretch those strings as much as possible.
Yeah.
Here's a funny story. Side note: first show I did with Buddy, I restrung the guitar. I thought I stretched the strings enough, and I restrung it with the uh, string inside the hole and just wound it normally. Buddy played the first song. Second song, when he went to Hoochie Coochie Man, guitar was completely out of tune.
Ooh.
And you know, it's funny. He told me after, you know, of course he got it into tune, and it's
Yeah.
not one string; it was all the strings. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought I stretched it.
Yeah.
And he told me, don't let that happen again. And it hasn't happened since. You know, he doesn't mind breaking a string sometimes. You know,
It
and
happens.
knock
Yeah.
on wood, he hasn't broken a string in probably a year and a half. With the way that I do it, I don't know. It just works. He just doesn't break it.
But he has what does he use on the floor? I know he uses a wah every once in a while.
Yeah. So
When he does this, I knew Jimmy, and he talks about Jimmy and all that
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
so he has his wah. It's a Dunlop, you
Yeah.
know, the guy signature model.
Of course, he has his own signature.
I've gone through polka dot, the polka dot manufacturer ones that are out there. Yep. I've used. Buddy gave me his personal wah that he has, that he had. It's like one of like the first ones that they gave to him. That was great. And
Go,
now
go.
I'm
Sorry, it's I have three golden
All right.
retrievers. They're all in. They've been laying out in the hall, but that's right. Guys, go, go on. I'll be down here in a minute.
So yeah, so he uses a Gold Buddy guy wah. The engager switch is actually out for deep, more of a deeper tone. And then
Is it on all the time, or does he still have to?
no, he still
So
has to push.
it's just like normally. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's been interesting lately. Trying to get it in the right position, because he's having some issues with his back or
Oh,
something.
I'm sure.
So he uses, here's how the gain structure works with the guitars and the amps. Wireless 84Q system. So 4 channels of wireless, The first channel is a wireless microphone, and then the rest are guitars. So it comes out of that into a Morley ABCY box. Out of
Mhm.
that into a secret weapon. It just gives them a little bit more grit, but it's a hand wired powder tag, it's called.
Mm.
It's a PK 808, so it's kind of like a TS 808, but it's hand wired. It's a guy out of Naperville who makes a Michael Collins, I think is his name, not Michael Stevens, Michael Collins. And yeah, so I use that. And that's a secret weapon. You know, it kind of gets rid of the overtones of the lows and gives them a little bit more grit and sustain. Of course, those amps are running on 12, everything besides bass, on the bright channel.
Yeah.
And he's using them incredibly hot. I mean, those things are blasting.